Okay, welcome everybody. I'd like to call tonight's regular council meeting to order. Recommendation that the regular council meeting of April 26, 2021 be suspended and that the committee of the whole meeting be convened. Moved by Councilor Ady, second by Councilor Randhawa. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting to order. Recommendation that the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting of April 26, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councilor Randhawa, second by Councilor Ady. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, we have one presenter this evening as part of the delegation. We have Paul Lagace, the Coordinator Poverty Law Advocate for the Prince Rupert Unemployment Action Center. Welcome, Paul, and please let council know what's going on with you today.
Great, thank you. So I'll tell you what I have, and then I have somebody who's going to speak very briefly with me. So what I have is we started a petition called Revive Prince Rupert 2021-22. It was signed by 579 of our folks. So we have a message to Mayor and Council from 579 folks from Prince Rupert. And this is what they have to say. Dear Mayor Brain and Council, we'd like it to make it very clear that we are a city in a housing crisis. And as a result, we also recognize the desperate need for affordable housing in our community. We firmly believe that housing should not be a privilege, but a basic human right, a necessity that we will all need access to ensure good mental, physical, and emotional health. Every person and family in our city deserves this, period. We firmly feel that a 6-story family-oriented residence providing 70 units, such as the one on 11th Avenue East, would have a positive effect in our neighborhood. What a great view of one of the last remaining forested areas within the city. Hayes Creek runs through the site where there are fish and other habitats among the lush forest. These folks will regularly see deer, wolves, and eagles inhabiting this land. Prince Rupert is not a sprawling metropolis, but a small community in the middle of a rainforest. We don't have a lot of space for development. Fortunately, the city has weekly garbage pickup, and there will be facilities so people will have somewhere to put their garbage. The increase in traffic to the area with the proposed single point of entry to the site with the proper signage, lighting, and crosswalks should actually make the route safer. Even our deer in Prince Rupert know how to use our crosswalks. This will be a welcome to them too. Our neighborhood feels like we need to look at our town as a whole. We want to step up and hope that encourage other neighborhoods to step up as well. We love our forests, our animals, and our water, but we love our fellow Prince Rupertites too. We can't wait to see what the new build will look like. And yes, I've seen it. It's amazing. Since Metlakatla raised the bar and did such a fine job with Cedar Village. As it stands now, a lot of stigma might be attached to a 70-unit BC housing apartment site, but not in our neighborhood. We will welcome these folks with open arms. The stigma might serve to draw a line in the sand between various socioeconomic groups. But again, we firmly believe that housing should not be a privilege, but a basic human right, a necessity that we all need access to. And since every person and family in the city needs this, as a result, we stand united with our fellow citizens so that we will no longer see blatant racism, classism run rampant in the city. From a practical standpoint, surrounding property values should increase and the neighborhood becomes more desirable. It's a win-win situation for everyone. We also believe that affordable housing units should be spread throughout the city's various neighborhoods to unite us all as a community. As it stands right now, 11th Avenue East is the site that the city has agreed to lease 60 years for $1, making it possible for the proponent to even build this project. We would like to thank the city for stepping up and facing this housing crisis that we are in. There are things that we hold dear to us that you cannot put a price tag on: people, safety, natural beauty, and building lasting community relationships and integration. The reasons we've all chosen to live in this fantastic little community to begin with. Mayor and council, please support this rezoning request and encourage other proponents to develop more affordable housing projects so that other neighborhoods can benefit as well. Sincerely, concerned citizens of Prince Rupert. And I have one of those signatures, and she just wants to speak to you for a minute. It's Miss Tina Stepler.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi. I currently have a tenancy dispute in process with my previous landlady. I found no house to move into and reside at Parkside Motel as of March 31st, 2021. My stuff is in storage. We relocated here in 2011 from Prince George. My spouse is Marlene Swift's grandson, Alan Thorne, of Lac Squilams, Tsimshian Nation, and a 2020 port recruit. Not everyone who needs affordable housing is struggling or in active addictions. We do need social support for sobriety for them also. However, families, those without young ones, and individuals who are not in active addiction, who are working and are disabled, or are single youth aging into adulthood, are left with nowhere to go. In my 22 years of being on welfare, this is the worst affordable housing crisis in BC and Canada that I have seen and experienced. I am Tina Stepler. I will be 37 in June. I was a teen mother in 2000. I have 3 sons. Their ages are 20, 15, and 12 years old. I graduated college in 2005. I've held a few jobs, but I have been physically abused. I walk with a walking stick. My oldest son's first experience into adulthood has been homelessness. He stayed home until we got evicted. He had nowhere to go. Then Changemaker's youth housing program, SOAR, found space for him, which is to be demolished soon. Where will they go? In my 10 years of being in Prince Rupert, watching the housing crisis grow due to water damage, apartment building home fires, and tenant damage, has been disheartening not to see those buildings being rebuilt, refurbished, or others being developed or planned to be developed in their place, such as the 11th Ave Lac Squilams apartment building. We need to rebuild what has been lost, no matter the location. For community neighbors to be against replacing those homes in any way or number is saying they are against the very thing Rupertites strive for: community together, to rebuild what has been lost. Developing the 11th Ave apartment building replaces much of the housing losses faced by the citizens of our community. Why are the homes we've lost that had been here for us 10 years ago not being rebuilt for us? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing that experience with us. I'm seeing this theme here today about that particular project, and we appreciate the comments, and there will be a public hearing about that particular project. And I want to invite you back to that public hearing to ensure that your voices are heard at the public hearing. Just legally speaking, for council processes, we have to keep an open mind on any project until such time that there's a public hearing, but we are hearing you loud and clear. We know that this is a massive challenge for our community, and in fact, every community across this country right now. I mean, I've talked to many other mayors where the housing backlog all over the place. So council in general is supporting housing initiatives across the spectrum, and we've been partnering with different agencies and different groups to ensure that we get as much stock online. I think current numbers right now over the next year to 2 years, we're looking at almost 300 units in queue right now for Prince Rupert. That goes from market housing all the way to affordable housing, many of which are going to be BC housing units as well. So council is working across the board, and we passed our interim housing policies right now to help support the process. And we have more we're going to be doing, I think, in this year to get more policy developed. And I know, Paul, we've been talking about a couple specific ideas that you've had in terms of what things council can do, which we're mulling over those ideas as well. But I want to just say thank you very much for coming forward here today. This is the type of forum we want people to come speak to at us. This is the type of engagement we're looking for. And so, you're invited at any time to come speak to us about anything of any nature. But in particular, that project, I'd love for you to come back to the public hearing because that's where we will have official comment on that project. And it is in that forum where council will make a decision based on the feedback that we get from the community. And if there's already a petition of that many folks who believe in that particular project, then I'd love to make sure that that petition gets officially submitted at the public hearing for that project.
Right. Yeah, and really, aside for the 11th Avenue, one of the reasons to do this, we always sometimes hear the bad news or the not in my backyard, and people have a right to do that. There's no question. We just want to, I'm encouraged by what council's doing, and I wanted to do this because I believe there's a lot of people support this, and I want to bring those voices to you, and we just want to encourage you. Right? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think the fear is not knowing who's going to be living there.
Yeah.
And those are all specific concerns that we collect through the process for each project, obviously.
Yeah.
But I will say, I do want to say one thing is that, one of the things that we've changed with our development process, which we just changed back in January, this project does not fall into that. But any project moving forward is actually going to have all the public input up front before it goes through a development process. Right now, all the public comments loaded at the back end after there's been few readings and people have been able to not get the information they need on a project. So we're requiring developers now up front to communicate to the community and provide the information before council even gets first reading on that. And I think that's going to change many of how the communication around every project happens. What happens is if there's a lack of information and it sits for months, people start to question and they don't have the information they need. So people will start saying things they may or may not know about the project. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that ultimately council, if it's a rezoning project, it's the decision's on us in the end. And whether or not a group on Facebook comes forward and says they're against something or they're for something, at the end of the day, council will always weigh the entirety of every voice. And then after the public hearing, once we collect all the feedback, we'll make a decision. And I want folks to understand that council is always going to be open to hearing all feedback. And then we will make a decision on that. It's not about if there's more or less against something. Mm-hmm. It's about whether or not we believe as elected officials who represent this community, what's good or in the best interest of the community. Right now, we all know that housing is a massive need in this community on all sides. And so we want to find a balanced approach to getting it done and to make sure that everyone's heard in the process. And so these comments you're bringing to us today is hugely important for us in our decision-making process. So we appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so seeing as they're the only ones for the committee of the whole today, we'll let you guys have your evening back, and you'll get probably the last sunset of the next 3 weeks, maybe, or longer. Maybe this was our summertime in Rupert, who knows? Hopefully not, but we'll let you go enjoy the sun now, okay? Thank you very much. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole to reconvene the regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Skelton-Marvin, seconded by Councillor Niche, excuse me. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, item 2A, recommendation that the agenda for the regular council meeting of April 26, 2021 be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor Skelton-Marvin, seconded by Councillor Randhawa. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3A, recommendation that the minutes of the special council meeting of April 12th, 2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Adey, seconded by Councillor Niche. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Item 3B, recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting of April 12th, 2021 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Randhawa. Anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, first we have a report from our Chief Financial Officer regarding the extension of the partnering agreement with the Prince Rupert Air Authority.
Thank you. In 2013, the city entered into a partnering agreement to provide a loan obtained in 2014 to the airport to upgrade their terminal. Principal repayments of that loan to the city are made annually and are funded through fees the airport charges commercial and charter air traffic. Given that the pandemic shut air travel down in spring 2020 and it hasn't returned to normal since that time, the airport needed relief in meeting its debt obligations under the agreement. The airport intends to repay the loan in full, and so an extension to the partnering agreement is being sought to provide the additional time the airport will need. The proposed extension is for 3 years, which would cover 2020, 2021, and anticipated reduced travel in 2022 as travelers' confidence returns. Under the proposed extension, the airport will resume making principal repayment to the city in 2023 and end in 2037. The city took the loan from the Municipal Finance Authority, meaning the city is responsible to make the payments as scheduled. As such, although the airport didn't pay in 2020, the city did make its payment with no impact to the taxpayers by using the Safe Restart grant provided by the provincial government last year. It is proposed in 2021 and 2022 that this grant continue to fund the payments the city must make in the interim. If council agrees to the extension, the city will first provide notice under Section 24 of the Community Charter, and subsequent to fulfilling the obligations under that section, complete the documents necessary to effect the extension.
Okay, so the recommendations that council authorize the city manager or designate to sign the revised partnering agreement between the city of Prince Rupert and the Prince Rupert Airport Authority, subject to notice under Section 24 of the Community Charter. Moved by Councillor Moreau, second by Councillor Niche. Discussion? Councillor Moreau.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have just 2 questions. The one would be, after the extension would be complete, do we have an idea of what the remaining balance of the Restart grant would look like?
The Restart grant was $2.8 million, and the amount that is in principal repayment is $350,000 a year. So that takes us down to just shy of $1 million. Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much. And this might be a better question for the budget, so let me know if I should wait for this. But I did notice that the projections that we'd been dealing with in the budget this year was forecasting the same amount of revenue for the airport in 2022 as 2021. And I think that was before the bailout package had been announced between the federal government and Air Canada. So I'm wondering if it warrants doing another projection of what the airport revenues may look like in 2021, 2022, now that we know when restoration of services will occur.
Do you mean for the repayment of the loan? Oh,
And,
or you mean the
for
airport?
the general operating revenues, for the airport ferry revenues, sorry, is what I'm speaking of.
Yeah, we had projected, we had estimated that it would probably be somewhere around May, at least, that the airport would start resuming. So now that it's into June, it's not that far off. So we're pretty confident that our projections are pretty close.
Councillor Niche.
I was just going to give my support for this. I think we obviously don't want to lose our airport, and we need to, you know, up until this COVID, the airport was always running in the black, and they were maybe not making lots of money, but they were sustaining themselves, and we need to support this airport and make sure that we don't lose it. So I think it's a great idea that we're, you know, essentially we're just moving it on for 3 more years, and we're helping them out. So I support this completely.
Councillor Cunningham.
Okay, I support the motion also, but the question I have for Corinne, do we know how much, if any, we're getting of the bailout money for Air Canada towards the airport? And if so, will that go to operations, or how will it be allocated?
The city did not get any of the bailout money that went to the Prince Rupert Airport Authority. And from what I remember, it was $750,000. I would assume that it's going towards their operating expenses.
Any other comments? Okay, is there anybody opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Baumann. Next, we have a verbal report from iPlan regarding DVP 2101 at 658 8th Avenue East. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Notifications have been sent out regarding the development variance permit 2101. This is an application for a R2 zone property located at 658 8th Avenue East for a proposed carport that will be built on existing concrete footing. The applicant has requested a variance to increase the maximum accessory building height from 3.6 meters to 4.57 meters. The applicant has also requested a variance to reduce the side lot line setback from 1.2 meters to 0.15 meters. We haven't received any feedback from the neighborhood in regard to this application. Because there hasn't been any neighborhood concern expressed, it is recommended that council approve this application.
Okay, is there any questions from council? So a motion to approve DVP 2101 for 658 8th Avenue East. Moved by Councilor Ignish, second by Councilor Randhawa. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have a verbal report from our Chief Financial Officer regarding the 2021 5-year financial plan bylaw number 3470, 2021.
I'll actually speak to both this one and the next, the tax bylaw as well. So prior to speaking to those budget bylaws, we'd like to provide a summary of the information submitted through our budget simulation the city utilized this year to engage with the public. There were 14 budget submissions out of 185 page views. Of those 14 submissions, 1 proposed reducing taxes, 1 proposed increasing taxes, and the remaining 12 left taxes the same. Other notable items were interest in increasing paving on average 35%, decreasing capital reserve transfer 13%, decreasing airport ferry by 10%, reducing recreation service costs 3%, and reducing public safety cost by 2%. Overall, the general comments from those who submitted indicate people enjoyed the tool and the information. The remaining individual category comments will be used by the city to create more information the public is interested in. The 5-year financial plan bylaw before you reflects the same 0% tax increase proposed in March with the same transfer to capital reserves. Following receiving BC Assessment's updated revised roll mid-April, there were no significant changes in assessed values aside from a large increase in the assessed value of a payment in lieu of tax, federal eligible property. This increase resulted in 1.4 million in additional PILT for 2021 than first calculated. We are aware, however, that this assessment is being appealed. Given the uncertain nature of this funding, we have set up a provision for the additional amount pending the outcome of the appeal. The result is no change in the budget overall. The property tax bylaw is the rates necessary to levy in support of the 5-year financial plan, as well as the requisitions sent by the North Coast Regional District and the Northwest Regional Hospital District. Given the COVID-19 pandemic is still continuing, the changes authorized by the provincial government with respect to the adoption of budget bylaws is still in place. Therefore, council may adopt the budget bylaws in the same meeting as they had been given 3 readings. Council is asked to introduce and give 3 readings to each of the 5-year financial plan bylaw number 3470 2021, the property tax bylaw number 3471 2021, and subsequently to adopt at today's regular meeting. This gives property owners certainty and enables staff the time to prepare the materials and messaging associated with property tax collection and the changes to the homeowner grant application process.
Thank you. Maybe we'll just do questions all generally here from council, and then we'll do the readings from there. So are there any questions about the budget this year from that we haven't previously discussed from council? Well, that is a stark change from 2015's budget conversation. I'll tell you that. I think it's been pretty articulate, Ms. Baumann, the presentations you've made, and I think the community is starting to see major change here in terms of the city's financials. We appreciate all the work from staff that have gone into preparing this document. I know how much effort and work this is, and I know with the deadlines and how it world works is that you work late at nights at times to get this stuff done. So we really appreciate all those efforts that you guys have put out there so that this community financially is getting back on track, and all our initiatives that we've been employed here the last few years is starting to come to fruition. So it's really great to see. So first, the recommendation that council gives first, second, and third readings to the 2021 5-year financial plan, bylaw number 3470/2021. So moved by Councillor Niche, second by Councillor Randhawa. Any discussion? Councillor Moreau.
I want to add to your comments there, Mayor Brain, just about the hard work of staff to get this budget together. And I know the easy headline is that there's no tax increase again for Prince Rupert, but I'm going to repeat myself from when this budget was first released. I actually think the headline is the fact that we're able to put away $850,000 into capital reserve. I think that marks, well, I should say, without raising taxes. To be able to do that without raising taxes marks a turning point in Prince Rupert where it simply wouldn't have been possible the last few years. And I've heard you use the analogy of renovating a house before, and I want to play on that for a second, where, you know, we inherited a house with a cracked and broken foundation where we were, you know, between our sewer and water and road infrastructure deficit escalated over $300 million, systemic revenue challenges from the port property tax cap, plus a contaminated pulp mill site, all on our balance sheet, costing us $80,000 a month. You know, instead of having the money to, you know, repaint the walls, replace the siding, fix the skylights, replace your windows, get new furniture, we've had to dedicate all of our energy and focus to fixing that broken foundation. And so to me, that's why this $850,000 capital reserve is such a turning point for the community, because it simply would not have been possible. It speaks to me as a symbol that we have finally started to turn that page, that we have now finally, hopefully, fixed that foundation. So now we can turn our attention to all of those nice to haves, to repainting the house and replacing the siding and getting the new roof and the leaks fixed and all that other stuff as well. So I just want to commend the really hard work of staff and recognize that this budget simply would not have been possible a couple of years ago, even last year.
Thank you, Councillor Moreau. Any other comments from council? Okay, is there anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have recommendation that council give fourth reading to the 2021 5-year financial plan, bylaw number 3470/2021. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, second by Councillor Niche. Any comment? Okay, is there anyone opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have a recommendation that council give first, second, and third readings to the 2021 property tax bylaw number 3471/2021. Moved by Councillor Randhawa, seconded by Councillor Moreau. Any further comments? Okay, anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Next, we have the recommendation that council give fourth reading to the 2021 property tax bylaw number 3471/2021. Moved by Councillor Moreau, seconded by Councillor Niche. Any last comments? Okay, anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, the budget's passed. Thank you very much. Now moving on to reports, questions, or inquiries from members of council. Councillor Cunningham.
Just a couple things. One, I'd like to point out and thank Chantel Megason and her crew of volunteers for the extra effort they did in cleaning up on the weekend. It was a beautiful sunny weekend, and a lot of people turned out. and collected a lot of garbage and debris and that had been dumped in the community. So, you know, we're all talking about cleaning up the community, and here's a group of people that actually went out and did something about it, and they'll be doing it again and looking for volunteers again. So I just wanted to commend them for it. Secondly, it's kind of old news, but I'd like to applaud the port for donating the $100,000 to oncology at the hospital. Our hospital's struggling right now in a lot of ways, not just with the pandemic and everything else, but with funds and you know, holding on to doctors and that. And this goes a long way to improving that sort of gap we have right now with the hospital and that. It also recognizes that there's people out there that really want to help our hospital. So I'm hoping this will continue as we go along. And thirdly, and it's sort of like a broken record, and I know we're doing something about it, but I'd like the mayor to explain to people what we're doing about cleaning up the downtown and the town, because with this nice weather, everyone's walking around and pointing out this and pointing out that. And the city is doing as much as they can with it. And I know it's like a broken record for you to explain it again, Mayor, but if you could go ahead and just explain to the people again so it's out there for whoever's listening exactly what's going on, I'd appreciate it.
No problem. I think I sent a couple emails on this topic this weekend anyways, so it's timely. And Ms. Miller can correct me on any information that I may or may get right here or wrong here. But I think back in January, we announced that we're going to be moving forward with a new major enforcement campaign. And ultimately what that looks like is it's a lot of staff time and energy to have to follow through on each property that is not abiding by the property maintenance bylaw. There's a whole process that needs to go involved in terms of letters and things like that. So usually what it is you give all the businesses or any properties that we see are having problems the opportunity to clean up their properties, particularly the ones that are filled with garbage and that type of thing. After a certain amount of time, if there's no compliance, then the city then reserves the right to send a 30-day notice to do a cleanup on the property. And then if there's no action taken after 30 days, the city then sends a 2-week notice that you must comply, or after 2 weeks, the city will come and clean up the properties and you will be billed accordingly with the cost of that cleanup. And the cleanup can range in a number of ways. It can be on health and safety issues with the property, for example. If there's something deemed that's a safety hazard for the community, the city can remove something that needs to be removed or clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up. So currently, the corporate administrator has been working with businesses in the downtown and has been looking at some of the more high-profile areas of the community, and those areas have been getting these letters. And we're trying to, encourage business owners to do the right thing. And if they don't, then we're going to start moving forward in a big way to start cleaning up these properties. Over time, we will move through different properties in the downtown, and then eventually we'll move into the residential areas until we start to clean up the whole community, or at least create a culture of people wanting to clean up the community. Obviously, after an economic decline, when a community falls, apart basically after they lose a mill and they lose the population and they lose their pride, and a community is left to sit for a while without that type of pride, people over time get complacent and then they don't take care of their properties. But we are at a time in a revitalization time now. And we also offered incentives for business owners in particular in the downtown, like a new tax incentive bylaw, to do renovations or to build new buildings and get a break for doing those and taking initiative on that, because we had heard that a lot of business owners, they get punished with having to pay more taxes after doing improvements to their buildings because their assessed values go up, and then they end up having to pay more taxes for doing improvements. So I think we've given a carrot and now we have a stick as well here. And we're letting the community know that we're not letting this be complacent anymore. It's time for people to take pride. If you own a building in the downtown in particular, it's your responsibility to keep your property, up to the property maintenance bylaw standards. And now we will be ensuring that those properties are maintained and that this community has a beautiful downtown core that we can all be proud of. So that's, I would say, the process that's currently underway. Did I miss anything, Ms. Miller?
No, you did not. Very well.
Councillor Niche.
I'll just add to that you know, the process of getting people to clean their properties up also involves the people that want it cleaned up. And you know, if anybody that sees something that they feel is not appropriate, we need those people to you know, whether they send an email or make a phone call, they need to reach out so that we can start the process with these properties, because you can't just you need to have something to back it up in order to enforce these things. And we all know that there's people that like to say things on Facebook. Well, we want them to send an email too, and send or make a phone call to bylaw to you know, report something, because that's ultimately will help the process of making it happen faster. So I just thought I'd add that.
That's a good point. And actually, I will add to that is that, you know, there are times when if there's an enforcement, you know, obviously property owners or whatever we're enforcing, you know, there will be a dispute that will be generated from that enforcement. Sometimes those disputes can end up in court at times, depending on the nature of the dispute. So having evidence that there are complaints driven from the community members that are officially logged, that is really important for the city to have that evidence. So yeah, like Councillor Niche said, having a complaint on the internet doesn't not really help the city actually enforce anything. Having an official you know, note sent to the city bylaw on the property that in which you feel there's a concern, and just so residents know that that information is kept confidential. So any notice you give to the city is not given out anywhere. It stays within the city, and it is confidential in nature. So we do encourage that feedback we need to ensure that we have that, you know, that backup, I guess, as that Councillor Niche said, so that, you know, there are enough voices to justify that we want to, you know, certain properties are need to be enforced. Now, that being said, ultimately this program that we're moving forward on, and we're hoping people do the right thing and just take the initiative, and the reality is just putting some you know, notice out there that, you know, we are no longer allowing complacency, and we would like people to do this. And you know what, we've already seen results from that. We sent 200 letters, I believe, to all the businesses in the downtown, and we've already started seeing people doing taking the initiative to do cleanup on their properties, which is great to see. And there's a whole variety. You know, what we don't talk about is all the people making the investments to change their sidings and change their front ends of their properties, which is starting to happen all over the place. And I know a bunch of businesses that are planning to do the same thanks to the tax incentive. So, you know, we got to move forward and clean up the past, and that's kind of the dual model there. Mr. Long, you have your mic on, so I'm assuming you'd like to say something.
Yeah, we need a written complaint, not a telephone call. We need a written complaint that needs to go to us. So sorry, Wade, but you know, we can't accept phone calls as complaints. They have to be written and signed by the individuals who are making the complaints, and then we can act. Thanks.
Councilor Morrow.
I thought it would be a good opportunity to plug the Prince Rupert app. For anyone that hasn't, that's generally what I've been recommending when people approach me with this particular issue is you download the app on your phone, you can take a photo of whatever the infraction in question is, and you can send it directly into the city. It's got a simple little submission form. It protects your anonymity for the complainant, and then you can just take a photo of whatever you see and send it in directly. So that's my only contribution to this particular conversation. If there's nothing else, I do have one quick report that ends in an inquiry, if that's all right.
Absolutely, take it away. So
back to Councillor Cunningham's point around the hospital board and healthcare more generally. I'm going to start this with a report, and I'll end it with an inquiry. So obviously, Mr. Mayor, with you off for the birth of your first child, congratulations. I filled in on a number of different media requests, and I think a lot of Rupertites watch Global News because I got so many. I just was inundated with emails and texts and phone calls after that, and people who rightly, I think, have some concerns that go beyond COVID around the deterioration of, I shouldn't say deterioration, I should say refocusing of Northern Health's energies in Terrace and other areas in the region. And I know we've talked about this before, and I just wanted to get a bit of a status update on where we're at with the terms of reference on Councillor Cunningham's health committee, and also if you might be willing to give us a bit of a report on the Northwest Regional Hospital Board, because I know the world has been inundated and really focused on the COVID-19 pandemic, but that doesn't mean that we should not also be advocating for gynecology services and dialysis services and all the things that he's brought to our attention in the past, because I don't think we want to lose sight of the fact that we cannot allow our regional hospital to lose its current designation. We can't afford to lose surgery services. All of this stuff that we've talked about with Vision 2030 is not possible without a really good local healthcare system. And that became clear to me after that, is I got a lot of people saying to me, you know, you represented our community well. Thanks very much for putting on a brave face, but we cannot forget that healthcare is bigger than just the pandemic. We need to hold Northern Health as accountable as we possibly can and not lose sight of that. So all that said, I'm just hoping for a bit of an update on where that committee's at, the terms of reference, and then also from Barry's perspective on the Northwest Regional Hospital Board and how that's been the last few months or so, or I guess the last year, I should say.
So are you asking me for that report, or?
Sorry, I was asking Barry. Sorry, I thought that's what we had agreed to last meeting, or last time it was talked about. Sorry.
Well, I could speak to the terms of reference that Councillor Cunningham and I are actually working together on the terms of reference for that committee. So I think obviously I had a child and I did get on top of that, and we've had OCPs and all these other things to focus on. But, you know, I will say actually after spending some time up at the hospital during our pregnancy, I can definitely see that there are some challenges up there as well at times in terms of staffing and things like that. You know, the recruitment process to Prince Rupert is a big challenge for Northern Health. And I think Councillor Cunningham's intention is to have a committee that will, you know, start to interact more as community residents interacting with Northern Health and seeing how we can help improve the situation, because I think you're right. Do you want to speak any more to that, Councillor Cunningham?
Yeah, I'm hitting my mute too hard. First of all, when that committee was brought to council's attention almost a year and a half, 2 years ago, the motion was tabled, and it's never been brought forth out of being tabled. And it's nice to see that people are on count taking this rather serious, because it needs the energy of all council. We got to focus on this. It's not just one or two. It's all of us have to focus on this. And as far as the regional district goes, the last little while, most of the energy of the regional district has been focused on the Mills Memorial Replacement Hospital, and little tidbits are thrown out to the other area hospitals and that, but not as much as I think they should be. Recruitment's been a big thing, but again, recruitment. People apply for a job and they end up going to Terrace or Prince George, where sometimes when the recruitment application goes out, it's for Prince Rupert, and then when people apply for it, they end up someplace else. This is something we've got to address, and I think that Prince Rupert Regional Hospital is the North Coast Regional Hospital. Haida Gwaii, they're very reliant on our hospital. The coastal communities are very reliant on our hospital. For them to come to Rupert and then have to travel down the highway for maybe a 2-hour appointment, they're not going to catch the next ferry back. So now they've got this additional cost of hotels, meals, and everything else. And sometimes it's not covered, and it's coming out of their pocket. It's dialysis, ophthalmology. These are all services that they're slowly centering in Terrace, and both the mayor and I have pounded on the table about this, figuratively anyway, about these services going down the road and that, and in a lot of cases, we just get lip service. We're going to look at it, we're going to do this, we're going to rearrange the schedule for the buses to make it easier in that. And then somebody phones up to make a ophthalmology appointment, and they're saying how they're going to deal with the people in Rupert and outlying areas, give them preference, and they get a 5 o'clock appointment in the middle of the winter. So they're driving back on that highway in the middle of the night almost, and things like this, like it's and that highway, it's just not acceptable that people have to drive all the way to Terrace for a 2-hour appointment in the middle of the winter. And, people are not taking these appointments. They're not going to these appointments. One, for fear of driving the highway. Two, the cost involved. And on an ophthalmology or dialysis appointment, you have to have an escort because you're going to be physically not capable of driving back after it. And these are issues that, even some of the ministers come up here from Victoria. Oh, I didn't realize the distances between the towns and that. Well, it's, you look at a map and it's only the thickness of your finger. But in reality, it's an 1.5, 2-hour drive. It can be 4 hours in the winter sometimes. So this is why I think this Health Advisory Committee is so important. We have some very good vocal people in this town that are experiencing this weekly, monthly, and to have them on board explaining and with their technical knowledge, I think is great. Like the mayor of Queen Charlotte City has been through the grinder over and over again with ophthalmology. And, he can talk to these doctors and say, this is what we need and this is why we need it. And the same with dialysis and things like this. And with the aging population, we're going to need these services more and more. And then diabetes is rampant in the communities now. And from diabetes, I don't know what the percentage is, but people actually, end up diabetic, and then dialysis is the next step. And, it might be a small percentage, but when you've got a lot of people that are diabetic to begin with, it's just down the road. So these are things that we have to consideration. This is why I think the health committee is so important.
Councillor Adey, and then Councillor Moreau.
Yeah, I got a couple of things to say that might bring 2 or 3 of the threads of what we've just been talking about together. But I want to begin with a firm statement of support for a committee which can focus on being a voice with Northern Health on behalf of Prince Rupert and the surrounding communities. So if I'll just take a stab at pulling a couple of things together. We began with some commentary on what are we doing to clean up, and one of the things that made me think of at that point was that the building owners have to be responsible, but somebody else is the one that's dropping the bag in the empty lot, and I think there's a role for education here, in terms of just kind of poking away at that kind of awareness piece that there are ways to deal with garbage and there are ways not to, and when it's misused, I know I was just out at Wantage Road. And some way there's an area where a bunch of people, I'm not sure if it's still there after this weekend, but they just decided that the landfill is too far, or putting it in the garbage can is not good enough, and so that's where it ends up. And that's an education piece to me. Yes, we need enforcement. Yes, we need to revamp sanitation services, which we're doing with the recycling program. But there's that other element that I think we need to really be on top of in terms of community messaging around that. The second thread we've been talking about is housing, and I think that's ongoing. And obviously this is a very key focus in a changing community. But where it connects with what we're talking about with healthcare is, to me, it's astonishing that we could be on the verge of growing significantly as a community in terms of population, in terms of the economy. And at the same time, we're looking at an erosion of health services to centralized locations in Terrace. Now, I do understand that there are levels of speciality in medicine that are going to mean that people sometimes have to go to Vancouver and they have to go to larger centers for very specialized care. But I think there needs to be a preservation of a basic kind of care that we should be able to get in the local community. So I think all of these things are manifestations of a community that is growing. And so we need to try and kind of thread those things together, that there's education for how to live in a growing community. There's how do we create the places for people to live. If you want the medical community, for example, to increase its services, then those people who come in to do that are going to have somewhere to live. And finally, there's the advocacy piece, which is what Councillor Cunningham and Mayor Brain are talking about, and Councillor Monroe, that we need to really stridently advocate for, at the very least, preservation, but preferably expansion of the medical services that are available to us in this community, because we're going to grow. I think that's it.
Thank you. I think we'll get those terms of reference going. And then we'll have a discussion at one of the next council meetings. I'll try to see if we can get that done, so we can start moving forward on that front. In the meantime, Councillor Cunningham and I have been in regular contact with Julia Pemberton, the hospital administrator, and who I believe is actually doing a very good job up there, actually. And she's been a much needed change at the hospital. And I think she understands the issues on the ground, understands the vision of where the hospital needs to go, and is going to work with the community to try to get the board of Northern Health to start seeing the strategic value of this hospital in terms of the regional growth that's happening in this area. So in the meantime, we have kept a good line of communications open up between our administration and theirs, but the community should be involved with this discussion. So I think that's where the intention should go next. So we'll get that moving for sure. Is there anything else from council for this evening? Okay, if not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Scott Morvan, second by Councillor Adie. Anyone opposed? Meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.